So I've been saying for a few weeks that I was going to take you into a bit of a deeper dive on this whole theme of barley bread. Something we see in the Bible a lot, something we read through mostly and think, just barley bread, so what? And this is going to be the so what. So the sermon today is barley people in the hands of God. So just I want to get this theme into your head before we start, that while barley is bread, the theme of barley is a people, a type of people, and you'll see this played out. So I've got a slide for us here. I'm back on right. I've got a slide for us. So give us the first slide. Because this humble grain called barley, and I want to give you, so I need to set this up for us before I go into my sermon. So if you go to the next slide. Okay, so we're going to compare wheat and barley. So this will help us with the rest of the sermon. So barley is the first grain to ripen. This is between March and April. Wheat ripens several weeks later, around May and June. So when they had the first fruits, barley was one of the things they used for a wave offering. Barley is hardy and it grows in poorer soil. Wheat requires better soil and better conditions. So barley thrives in harsh conditions. Barley is the food of ordinary people and usually the poor, where wheat is more desirable grain associated with finer bread. Barley is used as the first harvest offering to God, and wheat represents the later, fuller harvest. So what do we take away from this? Is that barley is the first grain. It ripens quicker. It doesn't require good soil. It doesn't require good weather. It literally ripens regardless. So if you think of that as us as people, as God's people, it helps you understand this concept of barley. So I've picked 3 stories. There's more, but for the sake of time, I've had to kind of whittle it down. So we're going to look at the story of Ruth. And we're going to start with barley in the fields of redemption. Now, how many in here are well versed with the story of Ruth and Boaz and Naomi? Everyone knows the story. Okay, so we're going to kind of touch on that. And what I want to do is, I'm going to read from the first chapter of Ruth. For those of you maybe not familiar with the story to begin with, or maybe you've forgotten it. So let's just set up the story a little bit, and then we're going to come to a couple of verses. So in verses 1 of the book of Ruth, it says this: Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land. So make a note, it's famine. And a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to dwell in the country of Moab. He, his wife, and his 2 sons. The name of that man was Elimelech. The name of his wife Naomi. The names of their 2 sons was Mahlon, Chilion, and they were Aphrodites of Bethlehem, Judah. And they went to the country of Moab and remained there. Then Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died. Funny, Jason was giving that prayer about just moaning about bad situations. We're going to see one right here unfolding. Naomi's husband died, and she was left and her 2 sons. Now they took the wives of the women of Moab. The name of one was Orpah, and the other name was Ruth. And they dwelt there about 10 years. Then both Mahlon and Chilion also died. So now the 2 sons have died after being married. So the women survived her 2 sons and her husband. Now I'm picking up from verse 4. Then they arose with their daughters-in-law. She might return from the country of Moab. Now, I've put here for you in verse 6. I want to kind of highlight bits of this story. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law that she might return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the country of Moab that the Lord had visited these people by what? Giving them bread. Okay, so in our barley thing, keep this in mind, right? So obviously this ain't about just bread, so I'm not going to make this about bread. This here is actually about God's sustenance. This is the fact that God provides. So this famine, they've heard that God's giving bread, God's bringing food, God's in charge, God is moving. Let's head there. Really, really important. And then we come down from verse 11. Now, did I do a slide for that? You have to apologise for that. No, go back. I want to come back to that. So from verse 11, Naomi encourages her daughters to leave her. So there's a bit in the story you remember where Naomi's desperate and says, look, everything's gone bad, I've got nothing, you guys just go. And she tells one, and so one girl kisses her, which in the story means she's leaving, and Ruth does what? Anyone remember what Ruth does? She clings to her. These things in the story are not like metaphors. You have to really kind of hold these in tension. It's really important, the actions of what's happening. And she says something here. I must have noted it probably here. Okay, we'll continue going down. So we move on and we see something important. But so before we get here, so hold this for me. Don't read this, just stay with me a sec. Do you remember what Naomi says? She says to her daughters to go, to Ruth, to go and be with where's Orpha going to go? With her people and her gods, plural. And they reckon there was a god, I can't remember the name, Sheshem or something, I can't remember his name. There was a god in that culture that was part of their deity. Ruth didn't want to go, Ruth wanted to stay. And this is what Ruth says. She says, entreat me not to leave you or to turn back from following after you. For wherever you go, I will go. Watch these words. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Wherever your people shall be, my people. And yeah, love it. Jump in. I should put it blue means you. So does bold. And your God, my God. Who's this? This is the God of Israel. This ain't a God, one of gods, many gods. No, Ruth saying, no, your God, I'm going to stay with you. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts you and me. Before we get to the next slide, I want to say something. How many people can see here the same story playing out with Jesus and the disciples? Remember? Eat my body, drink my blood, everyone's leaving. Jesus turns to Peter and says, do you want to go? And Peter says what? Where am I going to go? You have the words of eternal life. I've got nowhere I can go. And he stays. Elijah and Elisha. Everyone remember them stories? How many times? 3 times. Elijah tries to discourage him. Stay here. Stay here. Nope. I'm going with you. No, stay here. He says, as the Lord lives, where you go, I'm going. Now, what is important for you to understand here is, in this us as Barley people, is we thrive, and I'm kind of getting to the end before the beginning here. So we thrive under rough circumstances as Barley people. We're normal, common people, so there's nothing fancy about us. That's what makes us Barley. But also what's important in this is that we stick. Now, thriving in rough conditions means that what? Not because we just love thriving in rough conditions. There's a reason why we're able to thrive under different hard circumstances. Someone please tell me why that is. Why can we survive? Why can I survive anything that's hard? Because we're rooted in God. There's something behind me that keeps me grounded, not me. It's the God I'm serving. It's the God I'm holding on to. It's the God I'm looking to. It's the God I know is with me. When everyone says, oh, do you think he's with you? No, I know he's with me. I know he's with me. I have to know he's with me. Because if he's not with me, I'm on my own. And I don't believe I'm on my own. So here you're going to see Ruth makes this statement. So in the next slide, I made a kind of note for us. Ruth chooses covenant over convenience. Now this is a learning part for some of us. And Jason was almost alluding this in his prayer a little bit. Ruth had every reason to stay in Moab. It was her homeland. She would likely have better prospects because she was familiar with it. And Naomi had nothing material to offer her. There was no reason for her to hang around. She wasn't saying, I'm sticking with you because I think you're a safe bet. I think, your life just seemed... There was nothing happening around Naomi for her to stay. And yet she says, no, I'm staying with you. Yet Ruth chose faithfulness over comfort. Her commitment was not based on what she would receive, but who she was following. It's a big, I'm not even just trying to say this just to, I hate trying to aim things at myself, but there was 2 key times in my life, and I want to share this openly. When I was serving the Lord faithfully, and I had 2 opportunities come at a time when God was calling me into ministry. Very, very financially well off. One job was more than I could ever imagine I could ever earn. Easy for me to get into, the door was open, and I spent the evening, and I'm being honest, I spent the evening working out what my yearly salary was going to be and how I was going to invest it, what I was going to do with it. And that night had no peace. And I remember walking Sandra to work. Sandra remembers this story. And I was walking, because at that time, my church wanted to hire me as a youth pastor for just basic pay. And I remember just thinking about this offer. And I remember the next morning I had no peace. And I walked Sandra to work because I wanted to walk and think and ask God. And as I was walking, my phone rang and it was my pastor. And he rang me, and I remember him saying to me, he said, Martin, he said, have you given any more thought about this job? Or about that particular job you were offered? And I was kind of, well, and he said, it doesn't sit right with you, does it? And I went, no. And I took the job for the church, served that place faithfully. And it's amazing, we saw, why am I telling you this story? Yesterday, Dean had an open house at my son who was leaving, he had an open house. Friends were coming and going. And yesterday, I watched couple after couple who'd been through our hands as kids in our kids' church. Married, in ministry. And I never forget, I could have taken the money and run and saw none of that. Or I could have stayed faithful and committed in the role God gave me. Now, my life has been much better, I believe, physically, financially, and emotionally in every way than that money could have given me. And yet never seen any of this amazing stuff happen. Now, we might not all have the same situation I've just given you, but we might have our own versions of it's easy to turn back when things are not going good. It's easy to think God's somehow not hit with me because things are really tough. And it's scary to think that sometimes you may get to that last move where God is going to break through and decide to stop. And I remember seeing, this isn't in my notes, but I remember seeing this picture. It was a really good analogy, and it's quite scary, of a man digging a tunnel. Excuse me. And where he's digging, he stops, but right here was the end. And when you look at it, you're like, oh, if only he had one more dig. And he decided to leave it. And sometimes that's like us. So Ruth has made a choice. I'm going to stick with the God that I have. I'm not looking at the circumstances. There was nothing for Ruth to see. Let's continue down. Well, I've got a slide I put here as a comment. God often works through people who choose faithfulness before they see blessing. And this isn't a fancy saying, and I've always said this, and I've trademarked it so you can't steal it. I am not in the ministry for the income, I'm in ministry for the outcome. I've always said that. What my son Dean said last week was exactly the truth. I'm not here for the income, couldn't care less about the income, I'm here for the outcome. To see what God's going to do. There is no greater pay than seeing lives changed and churches grow and people going into ministry and people who had no faith having faith. Those who didn't know how to call on the Lord now calling on the name of the Lord. Those who didn't really want to come to church now enjoying church. You cannot put a price on this stuff. Then we come to verse 22. So Naomi returned, and Ruth, the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law with her, who returned from Bethlehem, from the country of Moab. Now, I've always said this when I'm teaching the Bible. I always look for timestamps and place names. They're always there for a reason. Look at this. Now, they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. Why? Who cares? Why does that need a mention? Don't you ever wonder, why did someone put that there? Who cares what was happening? Right at the time of the festival, right at the time when, I don't know, the street lights were coming on. So, this is absolutely key. Do you notice the bread here? Again, This is at the time she arrives, at the time of the barley harvest. It's the first harvest. This is the moment in our lives of breakthrough. This is where she could have turned back, and she didn't turn back. And the Bible says it was right at that time of this barley harvest. Naomi and her daughter-in-law Ruth returned to Bethlehem at the beginning of this barley harvest. What a detail. You've got famine, you've got loss, bitterness. They come home right as the first crops are ripening. This is the part here, guys, where God is, you're seeing this picture. If you read this and understand barley, this is the beginning of change. Does everyone remember the outcome of Naomi's story? It's such a terrible story when you start reading, you're like, does this actually get any worse? Can this actually get any worse? That she's in a field now and she's gleaning. From what? From the parts that no one else takes. Which is not a glorious position to be in. Until she meets Boaz. God sets up a divine appointment. But here, I'm just saying to you, when you read the story in verse 22, here is the setup. Where if you understand barley, you're like, this is the time of the changes about to happen. It's incredible. So I'm going to do a recap. Let's have a look. I think I put a slide up there for us. Yeah, recap. Just the word recap, but just look at that. There you go, recap. Right, we'll move on. Go on. It's like literal, isn't it? It's brilliant. I love this place. Recap. Ruth is a Moabite widow, an outsider with nothing. She goes out to glean in the fields to pick the leftover stalks that the harvesters missed or left. But she ends up in the field of Boaz, a man of integrity, and there's that word, he's the what? Kinsman Redeemer. This is like a Christophany, right? So remember when you read the stories, this is like a picture of us and Christ. She comes in broken, meets Boaz. Boaz, what did he do? He takes her in, transforms her life. Boaz shows her kindness. He protects her, provides, eventually redeems her and Naomi's family line. Ruth's gleaning leads to marriage, to the birth of Obed, who's the grandfather of King David, and obviously the father of Jesse, ultimately the lineage of Christ himself. So that's why I say recap. Look at the story of Naomi in this picture. Look at the picture of Ruth coming from this story. And Ruth makes the decision to cling to her because she said, this is where I'm going to stay because of this God. And this is the outcome. She ends up in the same line that Jesus is going to literally come from. How many of us could imagine that? And then we see in Matthew, she gets mentioned in the genealogy. Doesn't get excluded. So she's in the family line. How many of us in this room have ever wondered that? That maybe your family hasn't been the best. Your children haven't been the best. Especially like your kids, Sally. I mean, look. But there's still hope, right? There's still hope. Those who don't know, I love them to death, and I hope they love me as well. I wouldn't do without them. No, but seriously, you think, I don't come from the best line. I haven't had the best life. I haven't had the best opportunities. And God's saying, you never needed to. I'm the one. You're the barley. You don't need the good soil. You don't need water. You don't need sun. I'll make you thrive anywhere. And you see this played out in the Psalms, and you see this in Isaiah. So we're going to move on because I'll end up making this all about Ruth. We got 3 stories, but I'll get through these quickly. Next one, Gideon. This is one of the best ones. The loaf that toppled an empire. I can get through most of this to give you the backstory. How many people know the story of Gideon? It starts with, it's a funny story because he's hiding in a wine press, right? Threshing wheat, which is a weird situation in itself. And God calls him what? Do you remember? Mighty man of valor. And if you could see a movie of this, Gideon's going, he's kind of, hey. He's like, no, you. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to you. He's like, I think Are you sure it's this address? I think you've got the guy next to me. I think he looks like a warrior. No, you. And we know the story that he tests God. We know about the fleeces. So I want to pick up at verse 15 and 16. So we know this story. So God's come in. He's already called him a man of valor. He's already told him he's going to be with him. And Gideon has to go now and face an army. So let's look at verse 15 and 16. Or verse 15. Have I put the thing? Oh no. Yeah. So listen to this is what I want to help you with. Listen to his response. He said to him, this is Gideon speaking, "Oh my Lord, how can I save Israel? Indeed, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's household. I come from a people who are the least, and I come from a family who are the least." That's kind of like my testimony, really. And what's God saying? Didn't ask you if you were the least, didn't ask you what family you came from. Man of valor. I am with you. Man of valor. But I'm the weakest. I can't do it. We've seen this same story, Naomi's story, replaying out. So God gives clear instructions in this story. So if you remember, we got how many soldiers was it? 32,000? Yeah. And then he said, look, if you're scared, you can go. 20,000 go. 22, and he's left with 10. And you're thinking, that's not really good, is it? This situation seems to, again, if you had to go down to an army on your own, would you be happy if you lost 3/4 of your army before the battle even starts? So you look at the story. Now, he gives clear instructions, and this is really key. So if you go to the next slide, hopefully I'll put it in there for you. If not, I'll read it. In Judges 7, 5 and 6, this is clear for us. And we'll read. What's this? I'll really grab this. So he's whittled the army down, and he gives clear instructions to Gideon for the last few people left. So he brought the people down to the water, and the Lord said to Gideon, "Everyone who laps from the water with his tongue as a dog laps, you shall set apart by himself. Likewise, everyone who gets down on his knees to drink. And the number of those who laps putting their hand to their mouth, which is key, was 300 men. But all the rest of the people got down on their knees to drink with water." Right, my sharp scholars in the room and theologians, what was the difference between these two types of drinking water, and why was one of them an issue?
You could still look around when you were up there, if you were down there.
Good, see, it's not rocket science. In life, now they're in a situation where things are tough, they're going into battle. Do you think it'd be wise when you're thirsty you're in a battle situation to do this? No. Most of us are a little bit clever, or maybe even a bit scared, will do this. Why? Because I just want to keep my eye on everything that's going on, that I don't get someone jumps on me, right? Now we laugh, but it's key, because so what's this saying? Is God really interested that I drink water like this? No, he's not. What is it really telling us? What's really going on behind this story? Those who keep their eyes on what's happening. They don't get distracted. I'm thirsty, but I'm drinking and I'm keeping my eye on the ball. It's a small thing. How do we apply that in the Christian life? Are we so distracted with work? Are we so distracted with food and drink? Are we so distracted that our eyes come off what God's doing? We're just focusing on our everyday normal lives. And we say we don't, and we do, unwittingly. Oh, but I've got this, oh, but that. And then I'm thinking, wait a sec, where's God in all of this? You know? So I can drink, thankfully now, a bottle of water with my head up. Actually, with the cap still on, which is annoying because it digs in your face while you're drinking it. Not unless I've broken it off already before I've drunk it. Now, if you want to talk about hardship, let me just tell you a really quick funny story. This is going to be random. Sandra might be embarrassed. When I first started dating Sandra, this is really random, but I'm going to tell it. I was drinking, I had a bottle of Lucozade, and I had the cap, the old caps used to come off, and I threw it into a bush. And Sandra hates people littering. I'm not making this up. This is our first date. And I'll tie into this, hopefully. We went home that night and she wouldn't speak to me. Well, I'm not even kidding you. Go on. Did I throw the bottle too? She would not, guys, I'm not making this up. Some of you may think it's over the top. She was like, seriously, don't talk to me. I'm like, seriously? No, you're joking. And she's like, no, I'm serious. You know what I mean? You could have put it in the, why don't you just hold it and put it in the bin? I'm like, it's a bottle. So we just, you know what? That night I couldn't sleep. And I'm not saying this to make myself look different than anyone. 2 o'clock in the morning, I had enough. I woke up and I said, you know what? I'm going to make this right. And Sandra, my wife here, she will tell you, I got her out of bed, get dressed, and it wasn't even around the corner. It was probably like from here to just past Hope Corner a bit further. I got dressed. I went 2 o'clock in the morning, hands and knees, climbing through bushes, and I found the bottle and I couldn't find the cap. But I wasn't going to give up. And I dug like a pig looking for truffles until and it must have been a funny scene because I probably came out with all like twigs in my hair and I was like, I got it. And I put the cap on, put it in the bin, and then we went back home at like maybe 3 o'clock in the morning and everything was all right.
I thought you were going to say when the police arrived.
I would have thought the paramedics arrived. I thought, has he actually lost his mind? Is he all right? Someone saw him coming out of the bushes 2 o'clock in the morning. What have I told you that random story? It connects. This is about commitment. Are we really willing to go that extra mile? Is it really that important? And it should be. Judges 7:13. We're going to come down. Why is this here? I've told you why it's key. Let's look at this, 13 to 15. And when Gideon had come, this is the crux of this whole story. Gideon doesn't even get into the fight yet. And he hears two guys in a tent. By the way, disclaimer, if you're camping, be careful of what you're talking about because people can hear you outside. When Gideon had come, there was a man telling a dream to his companion. Listen to this dream. He said, I had a dream. To my surprise, a loaf of what bread? Barley bread. This is why it's in the Bible. Tumbled into the camp of Midian and it came to a tent. It struck it so that it fell and overturned and the tent collapsed. His friend was probably thinking, and? Was that barley loaf? Was it like that? Then his companion answered and said, this is nothing else than the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash. I laugh every time I read this. A man of Israel, into his hand, God has delivered Midian and the whole camp. How do you get that out of a loaf of bread hitting a tent? Like, can you see God's... So just bear with me 1 second, right? The dream is a loaf of bread hitting a tent. In reality for us, that's like, and? If I told you I had a dream last night that we were camping and, I don't know, a loaf of milk bread rolled down and hit a tent, you'll be like, did you get a toaster out and make some toast? No. But the response is so funny. And you see this with the lepers in another story in the Bible where they're shuffling and then they hear the sound of Egyptian armies coming and they run. God takes this bread metaphor and makes this person go, this is nothing else than the sword of Gideon. It's nothing. This is the sword of Gideon. It wasn't like a prophetic vision. He, in his head, could see this happening. Only God can give that. And I'm thinking, what is this saying? This is God highlighting something to someone else about you. But this person's lowly. They're from a bad family. They're from a bad background. And God uses you, puts you in the front line, and everyone else watching you thinks there's an army coming. Metaphorically. Are you with me? Like God using me, just Martin, who am I really in life? But in ministry, when I'm doing stuff, God on the other side is highlighting it to everyone else. And the same is your life. Why? Because you're Barley people. You thrive under harsh conditions. You're always ready to go. It's really, really important that you see this story is told in such a way that it dramatizes this last bit. Barley bread. Last one. Oh, let's read this. The barley bread symbolized Gideon himself, humble, insignificant in the eyes of the world, yet this barley loaf flattens the mighty tent of the oppressor with just 300 men. Please, someone tell me, do you remember what God said when he took the army down? Why he did it? He said, so that they will know it wasn't you, and they'll know it was me. Still worked, still happened. What is it God's trying to do with your life? What is it? And I mean this literally. What is God trying to do with your life? What is it where if you don't understand this metaphor of you being a barley loaf, and you're reading these stories, these barley loaves keep being dramatic. It's not the actual loaf of bread, it's what it represents. Something insignificant, something that's not powerful, it's not glamorous, but it seems to do wonderful things when it's in the right hands. So you being a barley loaf, if you're not multiplied by God, then what are you doing? You're just showbread. God is wanting to use you, right? He's wanting to do something dramatic, maybe throw you into a tent, maybe spread you out around 5,000 people. Next one, last one, you know this, and we're not going to kind of go into everything. The feeding of the 5,000. By the way, when Elijah fed the 100, it was the same bread. A boy's barley lunch in Jesus' hands. So if you go down, I think I'll just give a couple of slides and we're going to do an application. So we see the story in chapter 8 and 9. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, because he said, what are we going to do? How are we going to feed these people? Look at the words. There is a lad there who has 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish. But what are they among so many? I should have highlighted or bolded the barley loaves. Here we go again, barley bread. It's barley loaves that are feeding thousands of people. But I love his response. What was it among so many? Can you see the theme? Not good people, I'm not from a good family, I don't have any power, I don't have any strength. Naomi gives Ruth sticks with her, they have no money, they've got no finances, they've got no future, and she's in a line of where Christ is going to come from. And here we are again in the New Testament with Simon Peter's Andrew saying, but what's this among so many? How are we going to feed so many people? But we get to see the story now, right? We get to hear the end of it. It didn't feed 5,000. It actually fed, it says 5,000 men. It wasn't including women and children. It could have been 20,000, 15,000. Same barley bread. So I want to wrap up the theme here. I've got an application for us. I want to kind of tie this together for you. I think I've grasped this concept of being a barley person, and my prayer is that you would grasp the fact that you are a barley person, and in these stories you are the bread. And I'm not going to keep labouring the way this bread works, but thinking this bread in God's hands, because that's the key, seems to be devastating to things around it. It takes down armies, it overcomes circumstances, literally. It feeds others, it multiplies. Is everyone catching the theme here? Pressure coming in, hardships comes through it, glowing. Battles, soldiers, wars, smashes through them. Hunger feeds, multiplies. So it doesn't become a loaf on its own, it becomes a loaf for everyone else. Here's an application for us. The word application, that's it. That's what it means. Offer what you have. Don't wait until you feel qualified or abundant. Trust in humble seasons. When you're gleaning scraps like Ruth, remember the harvest is coming. God times his provision perfectly. Always. Embrace weakness, like Gideon. Step out in obedience, even when afraid. God's power is made perfect in weakness, which is 2 Corinthians 12:9. This middle one here, trust in humble seasons. When you're gleaning scraps like Ruth, remember the harvest is coming. David said in the Psalms, now that I'm old, even though when I was young, I've never seen a righteous man begging bread. But yeah, never. Now, I'm not preaching prosperity. I'm not preaching gold, silver, and money and jewels. I'm saying God always provides. God has no season for someone where it's constant lack. Constant lack. To prove a point, to prove that he's God or prove that you need to learn how to lack. No, every one of us experience lack. When you read verse after verse, God puts the solitary into families. And you go, oh, cool. No, it doesn't. Don't finish the thought. He takes those who are bound into prosperity. You see this over and over. There's always this upward mobility with God. You start here, you get tested in the hard times, but there's always this time that's coming, this provision that's coming. The secret is, are we going to be faithful? And I think, Jason, you alluded to this. Or are we going to bolt? Or are we going to complain? Or are we going to be like Ruth and say, you know what? I ain't going anywhere. Though things are tough, I'm going to sit this out. I'm going to trust. Why? I'm not trusting the circumstances or man. I'm trusting in the God who's behind it. Because provision will come. It has to come. It's promised over and over, right through the Old Testament, right through to the New. The problem for some of us here, and this is key, it's not if it comes, it's when it comes. Now, I want to be careful how I say this. I've always said to people, you have to honour where you're at in order for God to move you to where you're going. What we do as people is, when there's something greater coming, we forget where we are. Like if you've got to have a new job coming, you start treating the current job like it's no big deal. Am I being really honest? Yeah, it's not. This job's not really important anymore. Why? Because I've got this other job now I'm going to take. So what I do, I'll start disrespecting the job I'm in. Do you think that's a good way for God to launch you into a new position? And I've seen people, that happen to people, where something has fallen apart at the last hurdle because they started getting into this mindset of, well, I can just be lax now because things are moving on. Be careful. It's not about the position, it's about you that God's interested in. So God will always want to move us forward and upwards when we learn to honour where we are. And I'll finish with the words of Paul. Paul says this, I've learned to be abased, I've learned to abound, I've learned to suffer loss, I've learned to gain. And Paul says, in all things, I can do what? In all things, Christ strengthens me. Not, I can do all things in Christ because I'm great. No, I can do all things meaning whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, I'm good and I'm content in all things. Let's pray. Father, Lord, I thank you for barley bread. I thank you that it's mentioned over and over and over in so many stories to represent your people, the poor, the lowly, those who aren't eloquent, those who aren't famous. That, Lord, your word says that you have taken the weak things of the world to shame the wise and the base things to shame the strong. That, Lord, you take joy in using people who are ill-equipped. Those who are even scared, Father, Lord, you take joy in using them to bring down strongholds, to change people's lives, situations turning around, simply because people trust you. Not because they trust in the circumstances or they believe one day it will all come good, because they trust in the God that they serve. And like Ruth, they say, I will not leave. I will stay here with you. And your God will be my God and your people will be my people. And I don't know where some of our congregation are today, Lord, but I pray for each one of us, Lord, in our own situations, that we'll learn to cling on. We'll learn to honour the situation we're in. Be thankful for where we are, knowing, Lord, that there's something coming. That they entered Bethlehem right at the beginning of this barley harvest. For us, Lord, it's the beginning of change and the beginning of redemption and renewal. I believe, Father, Lord, I believe with my heart that we are in a stage at Underhill Church of renewal. And I don't say this lightly whenever I say things like this, but I believe with my whole heart that we are entering a time of the barley harvest. And we should be encouraged because it's coming. Father, Lord, let your will be done. We're thankful for where we are. We're thankful for where we were, but where we are today. And we're grateful and thankful for where you're taking us as your people. And as we heard today in prayer, let us, Lord, not hinder your work with distrust or fear, or let our minds be taken anywhere else other than trusting you. Let your will be done. And let us be your barley people, thriving, Lord, regardless of the temperature and the climate, Lord. We will grow and we will reproduce the way you've called us to at the right time. We ask these things in your precious name, Lord. Amen. Amen. Be excited.